Welcome to our course, FP&A Professional Formatting and Revenue Forecasting. This course is actually the second course in a series of 7 FP&A courses in total. Now, each one of these 7 courses actually uses the same underlying financial model that we're looking at right now. If you haven't yet had an opportunity to check out the first course in this series of 7, you should definitely check it out. Let's jump ahead now and dive into the course and get started. So in this quick video, we thought we'd show you some of the parts of the model that we're going to complete in this FP&A course. There's so many exciting parts of this FP&A model. We thought we'd show them to you here quickly so you can get excited about them. One of the things we're going to be talking about in this course is the keyboard, how to use it. For instance, look at the top of the screen right now. You can see that we're easily expanding and collapsing that Excel ribbon with the keyboard. We'll go over that. So let's quickly pop over to the Model tab, which is the second tab in the model right here. And you can see one of the first things you may notice are these check boxes. Underneath, they're actually binary switches. We'll explain exactly what that is in the course. But for now, imagine if we had 3 more months of actuals here. Well, we could just quickly add them in, and the model's updated automatically. So those changes we just made to make these numbers actuals have now propagated all the way through down this whole model. So let's imagine now that we progress forward and we get to effectively the end of the year. So now that these are all actuals, we want to roll the model forward at this point. So this is where we'd like to bring to your attention these really nice date headers that we've put across the top. And you can clearly see the month, the quarter, and the year. And in this case, we're projecting forward for 2 years, 2024 and 2025. So we said we wanted to roll the model forward. Well, how difficult is that to do? We pop into this cell, hit F2, and change this to a 5, hit enter. Now it's been rolled forward to 2025, 2026. So we've rolled the model forward now, but these are still showing as actuals. At this point, they're forecasts. How easy is it to change these to forecasts? Well, it's that easy. So let's talk about this section of the model right here, which is really interesting. And we're going to go through in detail the format of how to get these checkboxes to appear. But underneath, we have binary switches, which is essentially a 1 or a 0. So this table is really showing projected client contracts. Let's suppose we want to make a change to the first contract that's listed for Atlantis Foods. Watch carefully in these cells right here. We're going to go up here to Atlantis Food and change this contract in this cell from 2.2 million to 4.4 million and hit enter. You can see down here that the numbers move instantly. So now that we've just doubled the size of this contract with Atlantis Foods, we may want to take this original estimate of 3 months and stretch it out to 6 months. So how do we do that inside of this model? Well, it's easy. We go up to the scheduling section and just put these entries in like that. So what you can see now, if you zoom out and kind of take a look at it, is we've got a schedule right across the top with 6 months for this particular contract. It's also showing in this formula right here. So we're all set, and it's very quick to make these changes. So down in this section of the model, you may think it looks pretty straightforward, but underneath the hood, you're going to see some magic happening since we've tied all these formulas to the binary switches above. What we also have happening in this section of the model is we're going to go over custom formatting in some detail and give you information about how you can control numbers that are positive, negative, 0, and text entries. And just as an example of that, you can clearly see in here some positive numbers, and we're formatting those with a nice comma separator. So in this cell here, we could put in an example of a negative number, and we can see right away that we're formatting those with brackets, which is much preferred from a minus sign. Now we could quickly undo that change and look over here, and you can obviously see how we're formatting zeros, not as zeros, but with a nice clean dash. Now this entire schedule gives us accrued amounts, and why do we need those? We need to send them to the income statement in order to get a meaningful measure of profit. Let's jump ahead to the next video, and we're going to tour the next schedule, which is revenue, but looking at it as a receivable and the cash impact of the revenue. We'll see you there. So the revenue receivable schedule is a second schedule that we're going to be building in this course. And what we want to do here is show you some of the really cool features that we're going to teach you so that you can know how to build them into your own models. Now, one of the first things that you may notice down this left-hand side is that, again, we're making use of these binary switches, which show up as checkboxes. And we just love them because they look great and they help us keep our formulas really simple and clean. Now, as you can see here, we really have two types of contracts, which we'll go over in the course. And so this interface in the model really acts like a toggle for us. And so we want to be able to easily toggle between these contracts. And we can show you here just how easy it is to activate these toggles, even using the keyboard. Now, as we activated those toggles, you were seeing numbers moving, but let's take a closer look at exactly what's happening. Right here. You can see that for this contract, we're expecting to receive $2.2 million right here in April. If we switch this though to the other type of contract where we're getting paid sort of in time, like this, then you can see the cash payments happening sooner, which is obviously beneficial to the company. Now, there's a structure in financial modeling that's referred to as a corkscrew. And in fact, this is an example of a corkscrew right down here. And we use corkscrews to track the flow of information forward from one period to the next, to the next, to the next. Very common with working capital items and also when you're forecasting debt. And we've really put together the schedule here for one reason and one reason only. We need this line at the bottom. The cash impact from the accounts receivable. This goes straight to the cash flow statement, which we're going to build later in a subsequent FP&A course. So in conclusion, we could say that we're going to be focused on revenue in this FP&A course, but specifically from two perspectives. Number one, we want to look at the accrued revenue because that's going to translate through to the income statement and give us a meaningful measure of profit for the company. So we might think of a profit check as one health check that we might do for this corporation, but one health check is just not enough. The second one that we want to look at is we want to look at revenue from the position of receivables and look at the cash impact. That, of course, will flow to the cash flow statement, and it will give us another check of this corporation's health. So hopefully you've enjoyed that quick tour of the model and specifically the schedules that we're going to be building in this course. We're pretty excited about this model and the courses that we've created. We're delighted to share it with you. We'll see you soon in the next video. For this short video here, we'd like to dig in and give you a quick little pro tip for the keyboard using something called the Quick Access Toolbar, or the QAT. Let's dive in and take a look. Now, the first thing that we'd like to do just for this demonstration is we want to populate this entire area down here with a fictitious number. And what we're going to choose for that fictitious number is 7777. Notice that we pre-selected the area and then we inserted the number. What this is going to allow us to do now is hit Control-Enter like this, which populates the number all the way across that section. So this can be a really interesting keyboard shortcut. If you know you want to populate an entire area, you select it first, and then you insert either the number or the formula and hit Control-Enter instead of Enter. Now, what we'd like to do next is show you some really nifty keyboard shortcuts that you're going to use very frequently. The first one is that we're going to use Control-Shift-1 like this to put these numbers into a generic number format. Now, these numbers look a little funny because we're not able to see all of the digits after the decimal. So let's expand the ribbon here, which is Control-Shift-F1, just like this. What we want to do is look up here in the home menu like this, and we're looking over here for this little icon here to decrease the decimal. Now, we can do this with the keyboard. So let's tap Alt, H for home, and then we can see over here, now we'd need to hit 9 to decrease the decimal by 1 digit. If we wanted to do that again, we'd have to repeat Alt, H, 9, like this, and we've now decreased the decimals so we can see the number clearly. So you can imagine how many times in a financial model you may want to decrease the decimals or increase the decimals. And each time we do that, we're going to need to hit Alt, H, 9 every single time, or Alt, H, 0 up here to increase the decimal. This can get fairly time-consuming. So this is an opportunity where we'd love to introduce you to what's called the Quick Access Toolbar, or the QAT. If we tap the Alt key, we can see not only letters, but up here, there's numbers. And so far, we just have the number 1 in there, but we have the opportunity to populate that area, which is the Quick Access Toolbar, to include a 2, 3, 4, 5, for example. Let's just back out here and get that done. Now, in order to get into the settings for the Quick Access Toolbar, we're going to tap the Alt key. We're going to go up here to the top left, F for File, And then what we want to do is we want to go all the way down to the bottom left. We can see down here a T for options, and it brings up this dialog box. While we're in this dialog box, we want to go down the left-hand side, just like this, until we get here to the quick access toolbar. It's going to default here to popular commands. Let's change this drop down to say all commands. And now what we want to do is we want to look for the ability to increase decimal. So I'm going to tap the I here, and we're going to look for increase. And there we see increase decimal there. We're going to click add, and that brings it across over here into our quat. What we also want is the ability to decrease the decimal. So now I'm going to tap D, and we can go down and start hunting for decrease the decimal. Let's just find that over here, decrease decimal, and we can also add that to the quick access toolbar. Once that's been completed, let's go down here and click the OK button, and now we can see increase decimal and decrease decimal are up there in our quick access toolbar. So let's take a look at how this is going to work. We still have the numbers selected. Let's tap Alt on our keyboard, and we can see a number 2 here for increasing decimal. So now we're just going to tap 2, and we've increased the decimal. So we can essentially highlight these and say Alt 2 or Alt 3 to decrease, and it's a really fast way to change the number of decimals. So what you want to think about as you're designing your keystrokes in your workflow is you want to think about using the quick access toolbar for the certain commands which have a lot of keystrokes and are also very common. And we think that increasing decimals and decreasing the decimals really fits the bill. This is something you're going to want to do a lot, and the keystrokes are kind of long to do that just with the standard Alt key. This is why we've recommended that you add it to the quick access toolbar. Let's jump ahead to the next video now and take a look at the global units marker and why that's very important with financial modeling. So let's review some of the keyboard shortcuts that we've used so far. For instance, on this block of numbers, we know that we can hit Control-Shift-1, which puts them into a generic number format. We can make these easier to view now by hitting Alt-3 a couple of times to decrease the decimals. But a similar shortcut that's also very helpful is Control-Shift-4, which also has the $sign on it. If we decrease the decimals now, we can see that quickly puts us into a currency format. So what can also be very helpful is a percentage format. So let's put a new number in here, 0.77, Control-Enter. We're going to put that all the way through. Now we're going to change this to percentage format by saying Control-Shift-5, and it puts it into a percent format really quickly. So these shortcuts are really easy to reach and also really easy to remember. Control-Shift-1 for a generic number format. Control-Shift-4, why is that easy to remember? The $sign is on the same key as the 4. Control-Shift-5, percentage format, is also where you find the percent symbol. So super easy to remember. So let's start things off here with currency format. So we're going to hit Control-Shift-4. Let's put our original number back in place, 7777, Control-Enter, and it populates the entire area. Now we can't see those, so let's decrease the decimal a little bit, Alt-3, a couple of times, and we can see a nice currency format now. Now, if you're following along with every shortcut, that's wonderful, but you don't need to be. Really, you can sit back and watch because we're just going to do a little demonstration here. Now, one of the things that's so important with financial modeling is good design. This is one of the things that we talk about in our financial modeling guidelines document that we're bringing up on the screen right now. One of the elements of design that you should always keep in mind is that if you can delete something, you should. And when we talk about deleting things, we're talking about deleting or stripping away design elements to make the model look cleaner. So here we have an opportunity to take away these $signs. So we could hit Control-Shift-1, and then we're going to hit Alt-3 a couple of times to reduce the number of decimals. Now we have no $signs here. So we're at a point now where we've maybe deleted too much and we need to communicate some information. So some users might put a little thing over here that said US dollar thousands like this in brackets. And then what we'd need to do actually is copy it all the way down for every single row it would apply to. Now remember, you don't need to be making these modifications to your financial model. You can just sit back and watch. We've definitely made an improvement here. We've stripped away a lot of $signs, and we've been able to replace those simply with this USD thousands on the side. But while this is an improvement, we still see this as repetitive, and we want to use an opportunity to see if we can delete even more. What we're going to do is recommend that you go up here, please, pop into this cell, and pop in this statement right here. This is what we would refer to as a global units marker. All figures in US dollar thousands. With this in place, we're able to pop down here and delete these out. And what you can see is we've been able to greatly simplify this particular page in the model. Now that may not seem like much, but we always want to use the opportunity to try to simplify the design in the financial model so that we can focus in on the elements which are actually important. So using a global units marker can be a great way to free up a lot of space in your financial model, and then we would only have to mark the individual rows which weren't in US dollar thousands. Now that that's complete, we can pop down here and just delete these numbers out now that we're done our demonstration. We'll jump ahead, see you in the next video. So what we want to do next is define the starting point for our financial model. Now, as you can see here, we have our first column or our first month in column G. We want this end of period to be set at January 31st, 2024. So let's just type in January 31st, 2024 and hit enter like that. Now what we can do is pop back up into the cell, and we can clearly see up here the date, January 31st, 2024. But we want to actually format this to come out just as Jan, to show us that it's the January month. Now, if you're used to using the mouse, you'd be familiar with this technique. We hover over the cell, right-click, and go down here to Format Cells. But actually, this dialog box has its own unique shortcut, and we can just hit Control-1 at any time to get into that same dialog box. Now what we're going to do is use the Tab key to get over here into the Type box. Once we're there, we can hit Backspace, and what we want to put in here is 1, 2, 3 M's in order to get our months formatted as JAN for January. We can see that clearly on the sample pane. What we're going to do next is also put in an underscore like this and then a right bracket. What this is doing, the underscore is telling Excel that the next character should be invisible. So it's inserting an invisible right bracket there, which is going to help us from an alignment standpoint. Let's hit enter now to OK that change. Now we've made that change to this one cell, but in fact we could have made it to all the cells the whole way across. Let's use the Shift key and the right arrow to select all the way across. And again, Control-1, and we can hit the Tab key. Now the down arrow to get to custom. Hit the Tab key again, and we want to put in MMM underscore right bracket like this and hit enter. Now those formats are now set. Now what we want the model to do is index us forward to February, March, April, and so forth. But we always want the last day of the month. And there's a perfect formula for this. It's called EO month. So let's go here into this cell and get that started. So this is a perfect application for this formula. Let's tap equals, and we want to start typing EO like this. And in fact, now that we're at this point, we can see the formula name down below, EO month. Now we can hit the Tab key. It will complete that formula for us and open the bracket. It's looking for the start date. So for the start date, we're going to select this cell right here, G7, put in a comma, and now it wants to know the number of months forward we want to go, which is just 1. And now what we can do, in fact, if you're just using one set of brackets, you don't have to close the brackets. You can just hit enter at this point, and it will close the brackets for us. Now let's talk about something that mouse users do, which is a bad habit that should be broken. It's called dragging. We often talk about dragging from left to right. So with this cell in place, we could grab the bottom right corner right here. You get that little plus sign, and we could drag all the way across like this. This gets the formulas copied, but the problem is this is like a copy and paste of everything. And what it's done is it's copied and pasted the formats across as well, which has removed the nice borders that we had put in place. So let's click Control Z just to undo that last command. So let's even try to take that word drag right out of our vocabulary. What we want to do is we want to copy and paste from left to right. So from this cell, let's do a copy, Control C. Now we're going to hold down the Shift key and use the right arrow to go all the way across to the end of the forecast period. Now, instead of a Control V, which would paste everything, let's do a Control Alt V, which will bring up a paste special. The other keyboard shortcut for this would be Alt ES. Now we want to use the down arrow to get to formulas, which is the only thing we want to paste, and we hit enter just to paste the formulas. Now notice that there were two different ways of executing that last keyboard shortcut. Control-Alt-V is probably easier to remember, but the right way to hit that keyboard shortcut is entirely with the left hand. Why do we say this? You should keep your right hand over on the right side of the keyboard to use the number pad and also for hitting the Enter key. So some people definitely find that hitting Control-Alt-V all with that left hand can be a little bit of an awkward stretch. That's why we like to give you the option to also hit Alt-ES instead to do a paste special as well. So experiment with it a little bit and see which one you like. And one thing to keep in mind, these keyboard shortcuts, I know we've mentioned this before, but they always feel awkward when you're first learning them. Stick with it. It's only going to get better. You're going to get to the point where you love the keyboard and you don't like the mouse anymore. We'll see you in the next video.
Continue learning. Join CFI today.